Hey, I'm Oliver Carlson, writer of CRM Chat Guy, and I'm making this video here to talk about a couple of tips and tricks that I've been using recently in order to create more advanced charts that uses multiple entities, using the link entities to go from one entity, for example, the chart here that we're looking at, going from the user entity, looking through a many-to-many relationship onto the security role entity, and looking at how many security roles each individual user actually has. This is not something that we can do with out-of-the-box charts. So I want to show you how I've been able to do that. And first, I'm going to show you what the XML looks like on this chart, and then afterwards show you how I use some tools in the XrmToolBox in order to create it. So first up here, I'll go to the advanced chart editor, and I'm going to load all the entities. And I'm going to search for the user entity. I'll select it, and I'll look here at the role count per user, click on edit chart just so we can see the XML here and see what's going on. So this is actually what we'll be building. And what's relevant here is that we start out on the system user entity. From there, we'll create a link entity to the system user roles entity. This is a system intersect entity and a part of the many-to-many relationship from the system users to the role entity, which is another link entity from there. And finally, within the role entity, that's where we have the count column aggregate, which counts all of the roles that each individual user has. So as you can see here, we need to look up a lot of data, relationships names, schema names, and figure out how to do this. So I'm going to show you how I did this using tools from the XrmToolBox. I'm going to close this again. And as I always do when I create a new chart, I'll go ahead and create a base chart, which is basically creating a chart, a user chart that I can work with. We'll call this one Demo Security Roles. Okay, and we're basically just going to count something. It doesn't really matter what it is. We can count the full name, and we can group the users by the full name here. I just need a chart broken down by each individual user, and we'll create this as a bar chart. And I'll go ahead and say save and close the designer here, because I basically just want this base chart, which is a bar chart of all the individual user. And right now it's just a count of the users, so I want to change this count of the full name to a count of the security roles that each user has. All right, so I'm just going to bring my XrmToolBox back here into the window, and I'm going to go ahead here and load the charts again, and I now see my demo security roles. I have this available here. I'm going to go ahead and click on edit charts. So now, normally I would actually go to the Open Visual Editor and I'll start making changes to a lot of the properties. But in this case, I actually want to make some changes to the fetch up here, which is not something we can do inside the chart editor tool. That's where we do a lot of the styling properties and stuff. But I want to do something with the fetch. So I'll copy the part here from the beginning of the fetch till the end of the fetch. Hit Control-C on the keyboard. And I actually just close this window for now. I'll go back to my plugins tab, and I'll find the FetchXML Builder right here from Jonas Rapp. And we can see my fetch that I have here. And what I'll do, I had this there from a previous instance. I'll actually go ahead and just copy and paste the fetch that I just got from the chart itself. So now I have the chart here that I had from the that I just basically copied from the standard chart XML. And what's nice here is that I can actually execute this, and I can see the results of the fetch. So this is actually very, very helpful when you're troubleshooting charts. They don't look correct. You can't really tell if it's a data or the way you style the chart. You can actually come in here and see in a table format exactly what your data looks like, and then do some troubleshooting and see what's going on. And right now here we basically have a list of all the users and a count of the users. So of course that count of the users is what I wanted to change to a count of the security role. And in order to do that, I need to create those link entities. And the benefit here of being inside the FetchXML Builder is that I can basically use the features in here and click on System User Entity, for example, and say Add Link Entity. And in the link entity here, what relationship I want to link to. And there's a lot here on the user entity, because the user entity is basically related to pretty much every single other entity in the system. So that's where we have a lot. And I'm looking for the many-to-many relationship here that goes to the security role. So this one here is called System User Roles. So I'll go ahead and select this one. And I want to make sure that the link type is set to outer. And we see intersect entity is automatically checked. All right, so as soon as I click away, we can see here the link entity is being added, as it should. And I can go ahead and create another one and say I'll add another link entity from within the system roles. And I basically won't have one option here. That is mapping it to the role ID. And again, I'll set the link type to outer. All right, so now we have these two link entities, and we are now on the security role entity. So on the role entity, this is where I want to add the count column attribute. So I'm going to add an attribute, and it doesn't really matter what attribute name I select in here, as long as I select something that is always populated. For example, such as the security role name, modified on, etc. As long as it always has a value. And I want to make sure the aggregate is count column. So whenever you're working with counts and the link entity and multiple entities, always use the count column. The count is going to give you inaccurate results, and you're going to see the same results for all of the different values and all the different users. So make sure you use the count column. You only want to count columns that actually has a specific value. And I'm just going to give it an alias. It will need an alias. I'm just going to give it a temporary alias here. I'm going to switch this out in a second. All right, so now I have the link entity to system user roles, to the roles, and a count column on the name within the roles themselves. So what I want to do now is I actually want to grab here, I have this other count aggregate and an alias. I'm actually just going to steal this alias, copy it, and add it to the new attribute here inside the security role entity that I just added. All right, so now we have the attribute here, and I can actually delete my old aggregate because I don't want to count the users, which this aggregate actually does. I only want to count the security roles. So I go ahead and delete it here, and now we can see I have my link entity from the system roles to role to an attribute inside, and that's the only count that I have. And I can of course go ahead and say execute and see the results. And now we can actually see I have a list of all the users as well as a count of the security roles that they have been associated with, how many security roles they have been associated with. So now I can take this FetchXML here and basically just copy it. So I hit Control-C on my keyboard, and I'll go back to the advanced chart editor here, and then I'll open up my demo security roles again. I'll say Edit Chart. In this case, I'll basically just replace the fetch. There you go. So that's the fetch that I basically just created with the FetchXML Builder from Jonas. So it's a great tool. I highly recommend it, especially for testing and any other time you actually want to work with the FetchXML itself. And that will actually fix these few here. So let's actually just quickly try and update the chart. And I'll go back to my security roles here, my users, and update the chart. And we can now see it's actually updated to count the security roles for each individual user. And of course, since we are in the XrmToolBox here, we can come back here and open up the visual editor, and we can make some quick stylistic changes here on the series, for example. I change out the blue color here. We can give it a nice bright blue color. Say okay. We can add some borders if we're interested there. Make sure we give it a border width, as well as we'll give this a dark blue color. Say okay. And of course, border-style, we just want that to be a solid line, for example. Gotta say save. Maybe we want that bar chart to be a cylinder instead, just to give it a little more texture. Say save on that. And then on the chart areas, on the y-axis, for example, we can change the title here to something that's a little more saying, because right now it's basically just saying count full name. We can call this count of security roles and change the font size there. We'll change that to like 14. Let's say 16, just so we can really see what it says. Let's say save, okay, and update. And we can come back to our system view, look at the chart here, and we should see now the colors. We'll get some border lines on those individual charts, and the title down here should actually change. All right, so now we can see the new chart where we actually made something, designed a chart here, and basically about less than 15 minutes created a chart that went through an intersect entity, a many-to-many relationship, looked at the other entity, did a count, came back and made a lot of stylistic changes to the chart itself, basically by using the advanced chart editor in the XrmToolBox, as well as the FetchXML Builder inside Toolbox. So obviously, if you've been following my blog, you know Mohammed Rashid and myself have created the advanced chart editor built on top of the original chart manager from Tanguy, who is as well responsible for the XrmToolBox. So we have to thank him for the ability to create all of these, of course. And then, of course, the FetchXML Builder from Jonas. So huge thanks to those guys for making all of those tools available. So I wanted to show this in particular because not so much for this specific chart here, but to show you how you can basically just grab that fetch and look at the actual results of the data in a table format inside the FetchXML Builder and help it with your troubleshooting and so on. Hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very much. Please follow me on Twitter and sign up for my blog for more information on how to use the advanced chart editor for Toolbox, chart information, as well as using Power BI with Dynmics 365. Thank you.